I'm here today with former State Representative Eugene Geesey, who represented the 92nd District from the years 1969 to 1980. The 92nd District included parts of York and Cumberland counties. Thank you very much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
I wanted to start off and ask you if you could tell me a little bit about your childhood and family life and how that prepared you for public service.
I'm not sure it did, frankly. I was born in 1931, which means I grew up during the Depression. And that, for most people in York County, which is pretty much a blue-collar county at the time, was a pretty sparse upbringing, but we had fun. We had a chance to be kids. We enjoyed each other. We played a lot together. We didn't have any of the adornments that you have now. One guy had a bat, the other dentist daughter had a ball, so we always had girls playing on the team. That was never an issue at that point. But I guess maybe it was the austere background of the Depression and World War II that sort of led me to think that at some point in time I really wanted to give something back to the community, that I really wanted to make government work for the people. That was a desire that I had, I guess, from the time I was in high school, and finally was fortunate enough to achieve that for a time, and thoroughly enjoyed it for the most part.
Was your family politically active?
I'm sorry?
Was your family politically active?
No, not at all, and they were pretty heavy Democrats, as was York County. York County was a heavily Democratic county when I won.
How did you come to be a Republican?
That's an interesting question, because when Truman ran, I was the first time I was pretty much a avid Truman supporter, because I liked the decisions that he made. He had tough decisions. He made them. The dropping of the bomb was not an easy decision to make, but he did it, and saved probably 1 million lives as a result. And he was a feisty son of a gun, and I kind of liked that. He didn't take any kind of guff from the press, and he went right back at him. And I guess that's what I admired most in him. And maybe that also contributed to my wanting to be in politics. But I became a Republican from a philosophical standpoint. Frankly, I felt that people should have an inherent right to contribute to themselves. If they don't, they really don't have the kind of self-respect that they should have. To have people constantly being given something and doing nothing in return just didn't do much for me. I believe in helping people when they need help, and that happened many times during my time in office. But it was a philosophical thing. The idea of controlling the spending was always kind of important to me.
Could you describe your career before you came to the House?
Sure. I was involved when I got out of college. I went to work for a bonding company, Fidelity Deposit Company, Maryland, in Philadelphia. Lived in Lansdowne for a little bit, and lived in Montgomery County for a little bit, and then they decided to open an office in Harrisburg, so I was transferred to Harrisburg to open an office, and worked for the bonding company for a number of years, and then finally decided this wasn't for me, so I decided to quit and start my own business. So I went into the insurance business from scratch. It was dealing basically with contractors for contractors' bonds and insurance. Did not do personal lines. It was just construction work.
And what made you decide to run for the House?
I just didn't feel that we were being represented in the manner that we should be. I thought that the incumbent was paying too much attention to Philadelphia influence and not enough attention to what York County really needed and what their problems were.
And do you remember that first campaign?
I most certainly do. It was long. It was hard when you really don't know anyone. You have to start from scratch, and you're down a couple of thousand votes in registration. It's a lot of hard work. Wherever there was any kind of activity, at any point in time, I was there. If the Lions Club in Shiloh had a chicken sale, I was there passing out brochures. If a church had a picnic, Red Run Church, for example, had excellent chicken corn soup, I was at the church picnic passing out cards. Wherever there was any kind of activity, I was there. And it was pretty hard.
And do you recall how you felt on your first swearing-in day?
On my first what?
Swearing-in day?
I'm sorry, first what?
Your first swearing-in day?
Oh, swearing in day. I was a little sweaty, frankly, because I remember when on election night, when the county chairman said, well, this election's over, I said, geez, what do I do now? And that's about the way it was on the first swearing-in day. What do I do now? And it's a matter of learning the ropes, feeling your way, and understanding what's happening and where it's going on. And, you know, it was a real challenge.
Could you describe your district to me? The places, the people?
The district, really great people. It was a Democratic district by about 2,000 in registration, but they were Jacksonian Democrats. They were not liberal. They were conservative. They were fiscally responsible, basically blue collar, just typical down-to-earth, great York County people.
And were there particular issues that your constituents cared about that perhaps other members in other districts?
The big issue in basically a rural district is always roads. The condition of our secondary highways was pretty much atrocious and was not getting the attention that it deserved. So I spent a lot of time taking care of secondary highways. Other issues, of course, spending, taxes, that's always been with us. I think it'll always be with us. But those were the main issues.
Did you have any challenges in keeping your constituents informed of what was happening in Harrisburg?
No, I really didn't. I was pretty much available. I set up a system of being in different parts of the district every Friday night, either at a fair hall or a township building, and being available from 7 to pretty much 9 o'clock every Friday night. So availability was not a problem. Keeping them informed was not a problem. Answering letters was not a problem. Not after I got the system worked out, it wasn't a problem. But no, that was a challenge. But it was important to me to keep close to the people and let them know what's happening. So that's why I took that approach.
Did you have any mentors when you entered the House? And if so, who were they?
No, not really. But what I did do is, if I had a problem or if I had a question, I'd go to Ken Lee, who was then our either speaker or minority leader whichever the case may be, and talked over the problem with him. And we had frank discussions, and he was quite open, quite honest, never played a game, and he was always a man of his word. And I have nothing but the greatest respect for Ken Lee. The same is true with Bob Butera. When Ken decided not to run again, and I had the same relationship with Bob Butera, who's a super guy, and we still get together on occasion.
Did you ever take on a mentor role for any newcomers into the House?
Well, I tried to do tried to do that with a Democrat. From where was he from? I think he was from Johnstown. At one point, we were both the Republicans and the Democrats shared the front row, and I was put alongside of a rookie Democrat. And I tried to say, Mike, you really don't want to vote that way. You're going to get in trouble. And he still had to vote the way he voted. But we had that kind of conversation a couple of times. But I helped whoever had questions. If they had a problem and they came to me, for example, if I would vote no, people would come and say, well, why did you do that? And I said, well, did you know this was in the bill? No. Did you know that was in the bill? No. Did you read the bill? No. Well, that's why I voted no. Those things were in the bill. Oh, okay. So later on, when I would be the only no vote, all of a sudden get a bunch of other guys switching over because they didn't read the bill, and they knew I did. But whoever had a question, I was more than happy to help. But individually, not specifically, no.
What was your relationship like with the media? Did you have any differences in Harrisburg, maybe, than compared to your home district?
No, the Harrisburg Patriot had two very good reporters. One was John Scotts, and he was the Republican reporter for the Patriot. The other was Carmen Bruto. He was the Democratic reporter for the then Evening News. Carmen, you could never, or not Carmen, Scotts, and you could never give a handout. If you gave him a handout, he'd say, no, I won't take it. He'd ask you questions and then write his own story. Unlike most reporters, you give them a handwritten piece and that's the way it goes under their byline. Scottson would never do that. The York papers, the Dispatch, I was fine. The Daily Record never did get along with very well. It was a very liberal paper. It was owned by former Democrat office holder. As a matter of fact, the previous owner was a guy from Hanover, Joe Gitt. And when I was in the Army, I was in the Counterintelligence Corps. And one day at school, I took the paper along and I said to the colonel, do you ever read this? He said, oh yeah, we read that every day, because it is so liberal and so tend to be communistic at the time, socialistic at the time. It was the only newspaper in the country that supported Henry Wallace, for example. So yeah, we didn't get along very well.
What about relationships with lobbyists?
I had a fair relationship with them, but I never, ever had them buy me a dinner or exchange any kind of gratuities. That just never happened. Well, I take that back. I think the Penn State lobbyist did buy me breakfast one time, but I never got into that. When I was chair of a committee, it was a committee I did not want because the two previous Democratic chairs went to jail. And that was not something I was looking forward to, so I set up the policy and I told the committee members that before any bill comes before you, it will be totally worked out by all various parties concerned with the bill. So I won't accept any amendments on it. It's always, And the problems that we had was the optometrist and the ophthalmologist were fighting. My God, it was like blood in the sand. They were bitter enemies. And to try to keep that from happening again and to try to keep our members out of that kind of stuff was my main objective. So the lobbyist part, no, I didn't do that.
And you talked a little bit about your chairmanship of committees. Could you describe that committee? Did you enjoy it?
Consumer protection, no, that was the Professional Affairs Committee. Not really, because of all the problems that emanated in the committee before. And there were times, as I just explained, what I tried to do in the committee to keep everybody out of hot water. But there were times that lobbyists would still try to insert amendments into bills that had already been worked out that they didn't agree with. They just wanted to get something else in there, and that was not a lot of fun. To try to get the warring parties to get together. On the one bill, I know it took a year of these two sitting down, and I'd sit down with them to try to get the issues worked out. But it was not a lot of fun.
Could you describe the major pieces of legislation which you were involved with and what your role was in guiding those?
I guess the most major piece would have been the passage of the no-fault insurance bill. It was a very controversial bill. The plaintiffs' attorneys were opposed. Various insurance companies were opposed. They all had a particular axe to grind and wanted to get their issue in the bill, which I did not accept, frankly. To get it done was pretty hard. I finally had to go to the speaker and say I'm not running again, and the speaker said, why? And I said, we're not addressing these issues like no-fault insurance and et cetera. And he said, well, if I agree to run the bill, will you run again? I said, sure, I'll do that. So that's how we got no-fault insurance. Otherwise, it would still languish in committee somewhere. And it passed overwhelmingly, as a matter of fact, with only one amendment that passed in the House.
Another bill that we'd seen, it seemed that there were different pieces of legislation you worked on about pensions, ethical concerns.
Yes, I was able to, there was a Senate bill on our calendar pertaining to pensions. And again, I went to the speaker and said, you know, this situation isn't correct. Legislators were getting their pensions accrued at 3 times the annual rate of the state employee. And I said, Kenny, this isn't right. And he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I just want to submit an amendment that makes us the same as any other state employee. He said, okay, do it. This is the way you do it. And I said, okay, that's what we'll do. So I did it that way and submitted the amendment. And at that point in time, when it's, you can't duck it. You can't put it in committee. It's there. It's an amendment. You got to face the issue. It passed overwhelmingly, and it then made the state legislators' pensions accrue at the same rate of every other state employee. And that went back to the Senate on their calendar, and they had to face that issue. So they passed it in the Senate, and that became law and was law from 73 or 4 until about 2002 when they made that midnight pay raise and pension grab. And then they put it back to triple, and then people got really excited, so they and upset statewide, so they had to recant and put it back to double. the normal state employee. But that's kind of ridiculous. The salary they're getting now, that's ridiculous. It should not be.
Can you describe any memorable events that happened in the House during your term, either political, social events that might have been happening at the time?
Yeah, the one most memorable, I think, was during the Shap years when they passed a budget that they couldn't fund, and it went into August. And at that point in time, there was no power for the governor to spend money that was not authorized. He couldn't do what Wolf just did with these recent budget problems. So no one was getting paid. Nothing was happening anywhere in the state. Families couldn't feed their children because they weren't getting paid. So I think it was August 19th, and I forget the year, frankly, but I finally got up at 2 o'clock in the morning and said, Mr. Speaker, and I think the Speaker was nervous at the time, said, I'm not going anywhere until this thing is solved. And he just said, okay. Two other guys joined me. One was John Davis, and the other guy was from Indiana, I think. And I forget his name at this point. And at 2:30 in the morning, they're still milling around the House, and I took the mic again. I said, Mr. Speaker, will you tell these people to get the hell out of my bedroom? And he said, the gentleman's remarks will be stricken from the record. But we stayed, and the next day it was solved.
Now, you've mentioned Speaker Urbis, Speaker Lee. Were there other memorable figures of the House that were sort of larger than life during your terms of service?
Bob Utera was really a great guy. He was straightforward, honest, like Ken Lee, a man of his word. The Democratic parliamentarian was also a good man, because I took some issues on amendments when the Democrats were in control, and he always gave me a straight up answer that yes, it was germane, and yes, it was constitutional, you know, and that's how we were able to get some things done.
Were there major changes in the House during your term? Things that you saw over the course of your tenure that changed in the way that the House did business or in the membership?
I think we tended to root out some of the problems that we had with guys being heavily influenced by lobbyists, which resulted in the jailing of some people. For example, Feynman went to jail. He was the Speaker of the House. Two other Democratic House members who chaired the committee that I wound up chairing went to jail. I think we were able to clear up some of those things, which was pretty important to me.
What aspect of your job as a House member did you enjoy the most, and what aspect did you enjoy the least?
Actually, I pretty much enjoyed it all. The interaction with the constituency, I really enjoyed. Particularly, we had some severe issues during that time. We had the flood of '72. We had another flood a couple of years later. We had TMI, all of which was within my district. The '72 flood was major in Fairview Township, New Cumberland. It was just a mess. If you haven't seen it, you just don't know what it's like to go into a house and have it filled with river mud and people totally displaced. At one point, we got the prisoners out of the Camp Hill prison, the state prison, to help clean up. And hopefully they got some time off for that, because when you try to clean up after a flood, it was one smelly mess. The Army depot was an island. and it was all the way up through Greenland Farms and all the way through Mount Holly, and it was just the yellow breeches didn't know where to go. Susquehanna was very high, 5-6 feet over flood stage, and that backed up all the creeks all the way up through, and it was just a mess all the way up through Mount Holly. Big time.
And 3 Mile Island, you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
We did some of our research on some of the bills you sponsored. Looks like you were in favor of closing 3 Mile Island immediately.
I was.
What happened?
I was, because at that point in time, they simply did not know what they were doing, and the then Med-Ed president had no idea of what a nuclear power plant was about, and when he was interviewed while this was going on, it was so bad I felt sorry for him. Walter Kreitz was a good guy, but he was involved in something he had absolutely no knowledge of. My wife has a friend in Gaithersburg who was with the Atomic Energy Commission and who came up here at the time, and he said there was no problem. And from his standpoint, I guess Andy was correct, but I talked to a doctor, my family doctor, and he said that the incidence of cancer in the area went up substantially after TMI. Now, not reported, not documented. That's his personal experience as a family physician. And I have to give some credence to what Sam said, Sam Mallory. Yeah.
What is your fondest memory of serving in the House, either on the floor or off the floor?
On the floor, some of the victories, the no fault, for example, the pension amendment, for example. My first term, I submitted an amendment to the welfare bill that initially passed, but after Feynman and Evers had their say over the weekend, the reconsideration of the vote was a little different, and that was kind of a simple amendment. At that point in time, in the 60s, you were having a whole bunch of people move from the South to the North to get a higher welfare payment. So all my amendment said was that if you move into Pennsylvania and you go on welfare within a year after moving here, you get paid at the state from which you came, which made sense to me. And it made sense to a bunch of Democrats at the time. but after the weekend, they were convinced that they should not have voted that way, and they changed the vote. The other was an amendment to the public employee unionization bill. The way it was originally set up, all of the public employees who joined a union would have to belong to the American Federation of Labor Union in Philadelphia. That's the way it was set up. And I came up with an amendment to change all that, to give them the option. Now, I wasn't in favor of the bill, but that was a particularly onerous situation, I thought, that should not have occurred. So I came up with an amendment that gave union members, if they joined a union, the option to pick whatever union they wanted. And the Democrats were in control heavily at the time. And John Pittenger from Lancaster County, who later became the Secretary of Education, came to me and he said, if I give you 22 votes, and I was a freshman, I didn't know. He said, is your caucus solid? I said, sure. I had no idea. He said, if I give you 22 votes, will it pass? I said, oh, sure. So he gave me 22 votes, and it passed. And that's why if you join a public employees union, you can pick whichever one you want, and you're not confined to the American Federation out of Philadelphia. those kinds of things. That was I did wacky stuff.
What was the hardest issue or issues that you encountered as a state rep?
Thornburg as governor. Did not. We had some issues, which I laid out to him. Man to man, laid them out and let them read the correspondence, etc. And as a result, I just had no respect or time for Thornburg. It didn't want anything to do with them. I just, I guess you could call that a difficulty.
And what was your biggest disappointment?
Golly. I don't know that there was one major disappointment that comes to mind offhand. I can't. Thornburg winning the primary would have been the thing.
Do you have any advice you'd like to give to current members?
Oh, God, use your head, guys. You can't pass a budget without being able to fund it. What are you thinking? I just want to grab them and shake them. And then they say, well, we can do this and not raise taxes. You got to be kidding me. So you do 1 year fix. Well, then what are you going to do next year? You're not going to reduce the budget. Oh, God, heaven forbid that. You're going to have to find a way, and you're not going to keep finding 1 year fixes. Someday that's going to come to an end. And this past thing, it just boggles my mind. I cannot begin to comprehend what the leadership in the House and the Senate is thinking. I could never, for example, vote for Tarazi for dog catcher, and he's the Speaker of the House. Where's his leadership? Where's his head? I don't understand that. And the same thing is true with Jake in the Senate. What are these guys thinking? I guess get your head together and don't be afraid to say we can't spend money. We have to spend money we don't have. You can't do that. At some point in time, you just got to say, whoop, this is the wall, and we hit it. And they don't know how to do that.
And we always like to give representatives the last word. So, final question is, how would you like your tenure as a state representative to be remembered?
That he gave a damn. And I guess that's about it, that he gave a damn. And tried to do the best that he could for his constituents, whatever the situation was.